Hello, I'm Annie, and these are my musings. So, today's video is not about current events, but I do encourage everyone watching to continue to help the Palestinian people and anyone else who needs help right now. Just keep doing what you can to make the world a better place, and yeah, don't give up on that. Just keep doing it, and eventually, hopefully, it will lead somewhere. And I'm also gonna put in the description box a link to a GoFundMe for a Palestinian person who is trying to, raise money to help themselves and their family. So please check that out. And yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble for a minute. And now let's get on with the rest of the video. And I think, even though, like I said, this video is not a current events video, I do think that it's something that is sort of semi-related. I say that because I think that, the systems that oppress all of us are related. And part of how those systems perpetuate themselves is essentially through propaganda, right? And some of that propaganda can be the media we consume. The books, the movies, the TV shows, the, music even. We're sort of fed these messages of, well, this group of people is nice and normal, and this group of people is not. And I think that, the only reason that all these oppressive forces have lasted as long as they have is because they continue to be sort of taught to new generations, and part of that is through the media. So it's all sort of related and connected. So today I'm going to talk about representation in the media, and specifically this idea that some people have that I don't really understand, that there's already enough representation, you shouldn't ask for more. There's, LGBTQ plus characters and everything now. Well, first of all, there isn't, but, and, this extends to other areas of representation too. I mentioned the LGBT community because it is Pride Month, and, I am a member of that community myself. But this can really apply across the board to representation for any marginalized group, because there's always going to be someone who says, well, there's enough of that, we don't need more. And I really disagree with that premise, first of all, because in my opinion, there is no such thing as too many people feeling seen and heard and represented by the media that they consume. There's no such thing as too much of that. So when people bring up oh, well, what about this character or that character or whatever, it's yeah, but there's no limit. There's no well, we already have this many characters, so we can't add one more. Like, no, that's not how it works. And also, I would like to point out that, you know, the idea that people can't demand more and better representation just because there already is representation is also flawed, because representation existing does not mean it's necessarily good, does not mean it's necessarily well written, does not mean that, you know, it represents every single person in that community, right? Because marginalized groups are not a monolith. We're all, you know, individuals with their own life experiences, and what some people might see as good, others might just not relate to, and that's okay. We're all different people. We're all, you know, living our own lives, and this idea that you just have to like shut up and be content with what you have is just really annoying to me. And I'm mostly going to be talking about LGBT representation in this video, because the conversation I was having online with someone in like a Facebook group and stuff was, you know, about that. But you know, like I said, this can really apply to any marginalized group, any group that needs more representation, because there's always going to be that person or people who think, well, there's enough representation, we don't need more. And to that I say, 1, you're wrong. 2, why not? Why not add more? Why not make it so that more people feel seen and represented? Why not? Basically, I was in a Facebook group, and obviously I know Facebook is not the most liberal or leftist place. So like, I get it, you like don't care about representation for some reason. But like, what I don't understand about this is the idea that just because representation exists, and just because it exists in other places, it can exist in other places too. Like, people seem like this, seem to think that representation is a finite resource, and like there can only be so much of it. And I'm like, no, it's not. You can have like 12 LGBT characters in one story, even, and that would still not be too much. Like, because, like I said, marginalized groups are not a monolith. We are all individuals with our own life experiences, and a character that represents some people is not going to represent all people in that group. So to be like, well, you can't have more characters, you already have like 1 or 2, is not only unfair, it's also just ridiculous. Because in most cases, like, I'm gonna say it, I'm gonna name fandoms. Like, I was in a Bridgerton group. I watch Bridgerton. And, you know, that show is doing very well with racial diversity. And, you know, adding more representation in that regard. But for some odd reason, the people in that fandom are like against, well, not against, but like they don't seem to see the need for any of the main characters to be LGBT plus. And I'm like, but there's literally no main characters who are LGBT right now. Like, in that show. There are characters who are LGBT in the show, but they're secondary characters. They're not main characters. So, to say that the show can't have main characters that are LGBT is just, it's not fair. It's not right. It's just ridiculous, in my opinion. So, I was, in a discussion with someone about this. A couple of people, actually. And, like, that's what really inspired this video. Because if you're not part of the group being represented, or even if you are, if you really think that 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4 characters can represent an entire group of people, I'm sorry, but you're just wrong. Because marginalized groups are very diverse within the group too. Like, let's take the LGBTQ plus community as an example. Like, one character on a show, let's say they're a white man who is gay. That character, while he may be good representation, while he may be a well-written character, like all that character does not represent the entire community because not every single person in the community is gay, a man, white, like, there's so many things that go into how one experiences life. And that's where, that's why I never understand this logic of like, well, there's these LGBT characters over there that are secondary characters for the most part and have no meaningful impact on the story, but apparently that doesn't matter. Apparently they don't need to be main characters. Like, no, I disagree. If a character is not a main character and they don't like have a meaningful role in the story, it's absolutely fair for people to want a main character who does represent their community. I think that's fair. And I will never be the kind of person who's like, oh, well, this group is getting represented. Like, why? There's already these characters. Like, no, I'm never gonna say that. Because I don't begrudge people representation. I don't think it's some kind of finite resource. I do think that, even within marginalized groups, we all have our own experiences. We all are going to be feeling seen and heard and represented by different things. And that's okay. That's okay. What's not okay is telling people that they're not allowed to see themselves as protagonists. Because that's all kinds of messed up. And like, it doesn't matter if you're a member of the LGBT plus community yourself. If you're telling other LGBT people, like, well, you can't ask for more representation. You're just doing the work of bigots for them. You're just saying like, oh well, we don't need more representation. You don't have to agree necessarily. But I will never understand why some people think that a story can only have like 2 LGBT characters, and even that's too much, and they can't be main characters. No, they have to be secondary characters, because if they're main characters, you're pushing an agenda. And I'm like, shut up. No one cares. Literally, like, no one who isn't prejudiced actually cares. And personally, like, I don't see the point in telling other people, well, you can't have the representation you want because it bothers me. Like, representation doesn't bother me anyway. But even if it did, even if I was like, against having more characters in a particular group, I would never tell someone else that they're not allowed to see themselves as a protagonist. Because we all are the protagonists of our own lives. And everyone deserves to see themselves in the media that they consume. So, basically to wrap this up, one, there is not a ton of LGBTQ plus representation, or any kind of representation really, in the world. 2, representation is not some kind of finite resource. You don't run out of it. You can have as much of it as you want to, and having it or not having it is a choice that the writers of the story make, and people are allowed to criticize that choice. Number 3, just don't tell people that they can't demand more and better representation, because that's just unfair and unjust and unwise. It's just silly. So, let people want more and better representation. That's fine. Number 4, if you really watch a show like Bridgerton and think, wow, there are too many LGBTQ plus characters, I would like to know what secret version of it you've watched. Because there's like 4, maybe. And that's being generous. And none of them are main characters. None of them. So, like, maybe calm down and let people live, and let people want more representation for the groups that they're a part of. And finally, last but not least, every single person in the world has a different experience. And if you think like one character can represent an entire group of people, especially if that character is not a main character and has no meaningful impact on the story, I'm sorry, but that's just really weird logic to me. Like, if a character has no meaningful impact on the story, then they might as well not exist, right? Because they're not doing much as a character. And you can love that character, you can, appreciate that character, but they're still not doing much, So yeah. I hope you like this little rant of mine. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.